In 2017, a large group of young people of the Christadelphian faith toured Israel. A few months later, fascinated by the fact that a group of non-Jewish young people would choose to spend their time and money visiting Israel, we were invited to a conversation on Jewish radio in Melbourne. The host, Maurice Klein, describes Shabbat Shalom, the show Shabbat Shalom, as a show that presents information to do with the Jewish community and the Jewish world, with a centrality of Israel alone, with some music, good humour, with no PC or woke, just always wearing my heart on my sleeve. Joining Maurice in February 2018 was Sarah Perry, Jacquie Casey, now Clothier, and myself.
The news from Israel was proudly brought to you by the United Israel Appeal.
J-Air is not responsible for the views and opinions expressed by its presenters or guests. J-Air presents a wide variety of views and opinions, which is to the benefit and purpose of community radio.
You are tuned into the Habbo radio station everyone loves.
J-Air 87.8 FM. On air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And online at j-air.com.au.
You're tuned into the English Hour of the Shabbat Shalom program with your host, Maurice Klein.
Shalom Aleichem, Shabbat Shalom. Welcome back to J-Air, Shabbat Shalom program, the English Hour. With my co-presenter Lily Steino.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and excited to be talking about my favourite topic today.
Oh, well, we've got a great show lined up and very excited about it. In the studio, we have three guests from the Christadelphian faith who have not that long ago returned from Israel after an extensive tour with our ambassador, the J-Air ambassador in Israel, Effie Jacoby, and we happen to have Effie on the line. Are you there, Effie?
Hey, shalom, shalom.
Effie,
My God.
Effie, in the studio, we have a couple of anxious young ladies to say hello to you, Sarah and Jacquie, and Stephen Dotson.
Hi, Effie.
Hi, Effie.
Wow.
Hello, Effie. Nice to hear from you again.
Shalom, shalom, guys. Okay, tall from it. Wow.
What are you laughing
Really
about?
great to have you aboard. Just great to be able to hear the kids again. And Stephen, as I'm on Highway 1, heading towards Yerushalayim, and of course passing exactly right now near Laboon, the famous tank memorial center that we were all there and spent some time at.
Effie, just whilst we're waiting for Michal to finish the Hebrew hour, we're in the production room. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but Stephen has put together this amazing book of the trip. The photos are just something to behold. The whole story is something to behold.
Wow, that's really something special, and I would really look forward to trying to get a copy of it. Believe me, the memories are so still fresh from that time. I mean, we had I think an enriching experience for all of us, and it was just an awesome time for everybody to come through and travel with the Bible in hand and see literally history unfold in front of your eyes as you see a sight, quote the passage. What better can you ask for?
And is there anything we should know about our guests here in the studio before we find out about their experiences with you?
Wow, I want to tell you, the kids and the people who were with them, the lay leaders, the so-called slightly older people that were there, wow, they went and they understand and they see, but they're able to quote and they're able to relate the stories of the Bible that so many people around the world say, it's just a story, but it's not, because they actually saw the actual sites that are mentioned both in the Old and the New Testament. And I want to tell you, these are people with feet on the ground who are so pro-Israel, so pro-Jewish. It was an absolute divine thing for these young people who will form the young leadership not only of the Christadelphian faith, but for sure these young people would be the young leadership of the Australian society down the road.
Amazing. Girls, you got anything to say to Effie before we sign off?
It's just being back for a couple of weeks now. It's really good to hear your voice, Effie. Definitely have missed everything that happened on the trip. And looking at Sarah's book that we just received probably half an hour ago, it's just amazing to reflect back on what we did with you. And it's great to share this experience with you also.
Outstanding. And I can tell you, Effie, Stephen has told me that Avi will be bringing you a book in November, October, November.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. Well, I can only say, listen, we slept together. We really had a long schlep, 2,500 kilometres. We saw so many things.
The girls are laughing.
We learned about the Michiganers that are here, and we learned that everywhere you go, it's a question of yalla yalla. So, guys, yalla yalla, let's hear what Maurice and Lily and you guys have to say on J-Air. Take care of yourselves. You know, continue, be with your families, be with your faith, be strong, remain supportive in Israel. You are our ambassadors overseas. Kol hakavod. Kol hakavod.
Well done, Effie.
Thanks, Effie.
For sure.
Say goodbye, girls.
Guys.
See you, Effie. See you, Effie.
Billy and Sarah and Jacquie and Stephen. See you later, guys. I'm sure our paths will cross again. Shalom, shalom.
All right, we're going to have a song, and then we will be back with Jacquie, Sarah and Stephen from the Christadelphians. And I think I've chosen something that everybody will enjoy.
Me'ir
great song, Gadol Elohai. Joining us in the studio are three Christadelphians, Stephen, Dotson, Sarah and Jacquie. Our listeners may remember that, I think about March, April last year, we had Stephen's younger brother in, Andrew, joined us in the studio back in our old studio in Oakley to enlighten us about this small faith of the Christadelphians. Stephen, bring us up to speed again. Concisely, what are the Christadelphians about?
Well, the word Christadelphia means brethren in Christ. And so I'd probably describe ourselves as a Bible-reading, Bible-based group who worship the God of Israel. We look at the Bible as a whole. We believe that the Jewish texts, the Old Testament, are a foundation for the New Testament and the very context for the work of Jesus and the apostles that followed him. So, I mean, the Apostle Paul, for example, said, "For the hope of Israel, I'm bound with this chain." So Paul saw his very work as being foundational in Israel. And so that's why the people of Israel and the land of Israel are so fundamentally important to us. I guess that's where the trip came from. It's our interest in both the land and the people of Israel. And the fact that they exist today, we see as Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Excellent. Now, you've been over there a number of times. Girls, this was, have you been there previously?
Yes, I was lucky enough to go about 4 years ago.
And I've been twice before just as a small family trips, but this was the first time with a big group of youth.
Stephen, how many times have you taken group? Andrew indicated that you'll be taking a group to Israel at the end of the year, or you always take a group to Israel at the end of the year. How often has this occurred? How many times?
Yeah, so I've been over there a few times on my own and with my immediate family, but this was the second time we've taken a large group of Christadelphian youth.
And how many went last time previously?
From memory, around 45, 46 from memory. So this was quite a larger group. We had 58 this time, which was a lot.
Outstanding.
But it was a lot of fun, and everyone really got on well, and it went very well.
And I asked you in the production room, I wasn't aware if Effie had any assistance. And you indicated that he was Robinson Crusoe.
Effie was on his own. Of course, we had a great bus driver, and we were there supporting Effie. But Effie was fantastic.
How many of the leaders went?
We had there was 2 couples that organised the trip, and we invited another 2 couples. So we had 50.
Yeah, so you had some
youth.
Backup support.
Yeah, we had.
Keep the youngsters in line.
You could say that.
Girls, you've been to Israel previously. What were your expectations of this trip?
I think because I'd been previously before this trip, it was more, the first trip was quite overwhelmed with the whole experience. This time was more to understand, the culture and the people and just appreciate it more in a holistic sense.
How old were you when you went last time?
I went when I was 14 and then when I was 17.
And you're a few years older now.
Yeah.
Not many.
Different perspective. Jacquie, you've been there previously. What were your expectations of going with a big group?
I was on the last big group, so I
Lucky you.
Definitely knew what was ahead of me in that sense. But again, being 4 years older, and I was travelling with quite a younger group than what I was last time, I didn't know what to expect as the group going. I didn't know a lot of the people because we were spread throughout Australia. But from an expectation point of view, I expected things to have developed somewhat, which that definitely lived up to what I was thinking. But there was just so much more that I was able to see that we hadn't seen 4 years ago. So that blew my expectation away because it was just absolutely amazing to see what had developed that wasn't there 4 years ago.
Steve, do you remember what your feelings and emotions were the first time you went to Israel, and how old were you?
I would have gone about 10 years ago. Does that give away my age? Yes, I would.
No,
not really.
You only look 24.
Right, fair enough. So I was older, so I didn't go as a young person. So I went older. I would have been probably 35 or 40 when I went for the first time, I think. And it's hard to remember back then, but I was just overwhelmed with the geography of the place, probably primarily. And of course I know the Bible stories so well, and when you go there and actually see where they occurred and sort of link what you know academically in that sense with the geography and the actual places you go and visit, it just comes to life.
Because it really does look very different to anything, to the topography or anything in Australia.
It is. The thing about Israel is it's got everything. Like, you've got the beautiful Mediterranean, you've got the mountains, you've got the desert, but the lush, forests, and
But you're not biased, are you?
I mean, I love the place. I mean, people say,
It has got everything.
Why do you go to Israel? You know, you'd go to Israel even if you weren't a Bible student. You know, like it's just as a place, it's fantastic.
And it's pretty easily accessible as well. You know, it's a small country. You can go north to south pretty quickly.
Yeah, and safe. I mean, I think that's the other thing. I mean, as you can imagine, if you're taking 50 young people, you get a few calls from the parents and saying, you know, is it safe? You know, because you get a certain bias, and in Australian press. But you feel very safe over there. It's an easy place to visit.
We're going to talk in a minute about the history and the places you visited. But girls, what really surprised you this trip? Because you'd been before, and not the history so much, but just about the cities and the people and everything themselves.
This trip for me, I think it was the atmosphere, because we'd just gone just after Trump had announced moving the embassy. So
great.
the atmosphere in Jerusalem was like ecstatic, and also witnessing a little bit of tension, and that was just amazing to see how passionate the people were about Jerusalem and about their land. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything further to add to what Sarah's just said, but yeah, the emotion of actually being there just really kind of blew us away. So from that aspect,
and you were in Jerusalem when he announced it, weren't you? You're heading down towards the Wailing Wall, weren't you, or something? And somebody made a comment. Was that rain or something?
We arrived just after Trump announced it. We were just in Tel Aviv, actually.
All right.
In fact, we went and visited.
Mistake. Yeah.
Yeah, we went and visited the embassy at the time. There was so many people around the embassy of America in Tel Aviv. It was quite exciting. But what it was, I think, it would have been 2 weeks later. We arrived in Jerusalem on a Friday morning, and so that Friday night we headed down towards the Western Wall. And there was a whole bunch of us walking down through the old city there, and someone said, "It sounds like it's pouring rain." I said, "Well, it's not raining." They said, "Well, it must be a crowd of people." And we got down into just close into the Western Wall, and I don't know whether it was just a combination of the fact, you know, that Trump had just made this announcement. Hanukkah just finished, so the whole week of
Hanukkah
just finished.
Yeah, it was good effort.
So, yeah,
it's a good effort.
But I don't know how many people were in the square, but it was you could hardly get in the square, and there's people dancing and singing, and there's music, and it was just almost overwhelming. There's so much emotion and so much tension there. It was just extraordinary.
Nobody parties like the Orthodox.
Wasn't just the Orthodox.
What were some of the things that he added to what you had wanted and expected to see?
Good question, Lily.
That's probably a better question answered by the girls, but I'll give you. I will say one thing. I spoke to Effie 3 times before we went because I've done it before. I knew how important a good tour guide is. It really makes or breaks a trip. We had a good tour guide last time, but I had expectations. So we wanted to spend a lot of time talking about the Bible and the context of why we were there. We wanted that, and Effie was so accommodating in that. You know, in fact, in a couple of places, one of my memories is Effie reading the story of Deborah and Barak on the top of Mount Tabor, and just hearing.
I've been there.
Yeah,
I was there last trip.
Great spot. And Effie he read the story for us, and like little things like that. And it was just so emotional. But Effie added so much. He has so much experience, you know, from life in the kibbutz, life in the military, just life in Israel. He just added so much. It was really good.
And worked in big institution, sporting institution, Wingate there as well. In Israel, when you obviously see a lot of the young adults in uniform with their weapons. Got to take their weapon with them everywhere. You get a chance to speak to them at all?
We did up north on the border of Lebanon. Actually, Effie...
There'd be a few there, yep.
Yeah, Effie called one over and convinced him to come and talk to us. I'm not sure he was meant to, but it was fantastic. He was a paratrooper.
Sanchan.
I believe.
Paratrooper.
And he was sharing some of his experiences, and he only had 6 months left, so he'd seen a lot. And he had witnessed a few things in Hebron as well, so he was sharing a lot of his experiences, and for us it was quite a moving moment because you realise people of your same age are living in such a different way and having to serve for their country, and things that we don't even think about and stresses that we don't even have to live day to day. And that was just amazing to hear his point of view.
It is. I've got relatives in Israel, a lot of relatives, but my cousin's children, they're 16 and a half years old, and they're already talking about going into the army. They're already prepared. It's like next year or a little bit after next year. And when I see them all walking around Israel, it really evokes a special thought and feeling towards them all. And they all contribute, or most contribute. What was the average age of the group? Besides Stephen.
Who brought up the age? No.
Yes.
As I would say about 21.
Oh, great.
Yeah, which is a little bit younger than me. I was on the tail end of the older young people's age bracket.
But they're at an age where they can appreciate things. They're there to experience and learn and observe and take it all in. It wasn't just, I'm sure you had lots of fun, but it wasn't just a sightseeing trip.
I think their age is a really good age to grasp everything that they're seeing in front of them, having been brought up knowing all the Bible stories, like Steve was saying. And for me, it was just reaffirming everything that, I believe in. So from seeing it from their perspective 4-5 years ago was great then, but it was so much better this time round, and just, I don't know, my eyes were just opened a lot more.
So what were some of the comments that you got back from the younger people in the group?
Mind-blowing, amazing, definitely not what they expected, but in a really good way. I suppose they didn't really know what they were going to see. I suppose growing up, it's like anything. When you read something, you have you kind of get this picture in your head about what something's going to be like, and then when you actually experience it, it totally blows it out of the water. So from their perspective, there was nothing but amazing comments, which was so exciting on my end, because I kind of thought, if they had a different experience to what I had, I probably would have been disappointed for them. But yeah, they thoroughly enjoyed it.
And this was a group from all over Australia.
Yes. Majority, I would say, was probably Sydney and Adelaide. There was a small group of us from Melbourne, Sarah and I, and another guy that came with us. It was great to see a lot of people from all over Australia coming on a group tour.
Outstanding. In the studio we have Stephen, Jacquie and Sarah from the Christadelphians, and they'll be back with us straight after this lovely song.
From a distance, the world looks blue and green, and the snow-capped mountains white. From a distance, the ocean meets the stream, and the eagle takes to flight. From a distance, there is harmony, and it echoes through the land. It's the voice of hope, it's the voice of peace, it's the voice of every man. From a distance, we all have enough, and no one is in need. And there are no guns, no bombs, and no disease, no hungry mouths to feed. From a distance, we are instruments marching in a common band, playing songs of hope, playing songs of peace. They're the songs of every man. God is watching us, God is watching us, God is watching us from a distance. though we are at war. From a distance, I just cannot comprehend what all this fighting is for. From a distance, there is harmony, and it echoes through the land. And it's the hope of hopes, it's the love of loves, it's the heart of every man. It's the hope of hopes, it's the love of loves. This is the song of every man. And God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from a distance. Oh, God is watching us. God is watching. God is watching us from a distance.
Enjoy listening to J-Air? Support us and become a member by visiting our website j-air.com.au.
From a Distance. Great Bette Midler.
Great choice of music
Beautiful
again.
song, beautiful song. Right, you're listening to Shabbat Shalom with Steiner and Klein and the Christadelphians. Now, I'm sure you went down to Beersheba.
We absolutely did, which was an amazing thing because the memorial site had just been opened up about a month before, so that was pretty amazing to see that. There's a fantastic audiovisual presentation there that took you back to what it would have been like for the Australian light horse, and that was an incredible moment.
And there's much to sort of understand about the events, the climate, the topography. Just, war is never very, wars sucks, but you just can't imagine. And that turned the tide. I personally believe that if it wasn't for the light horse, the charge of the light horse, there may not be in Israel today.
Absolutely right. We actually did a bit of work on that before we went away with the group, and just expressed how important 1917 was to the whole history. It changed the history of the world.
It did.
The Ottoman Empire being there,
yep.
And you link that with the Anzac, the failure of the Anzacs in Turkey, and then the way they then came back through Egypt and up through Israel, and pushed the Ottoman Empire out of the land and made the way for the Jewish people to return. And that for us is Bible prophecy right there. So it was exciting to go and see that.
There you go. And how amazing, how moving is the cemetery?
It was really moving. I've been there quite a few times. This time we had a bit of it was the first to find Tibby Cotter's grave. I don't know whether you know who Tibby Cotter is. Do you know? He's the only Australian Test cricketer to ever fight for his country and die. And he died on that day. He was one of the 32 who died in Beersheba.
It's an amazing fact. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and
but
he's got a memorial in the Sydney Cricket Ground. So it was kind of a good thing.
You go along and you read the names and you read the ages and where some commentaries, and you were still there. The reefs were still all there. Amazing where they all came from. Many organisations from Australia. Wasn't there during the anniversary, but people that were there said it was an amazing experience. What I found, what sort of evoked a real emotion, is I was there with Effie, took us down with a friend of ours, Glennis Lipson from Mugandubba Dom. But leaving Beersheba, going in, arriving at Beersheba, but leaving and looking behind, and you see the Israeli flags, and the Australian flag, and the New Zealand flags. I choked up. A bit choky now.
It's so few Australians know the history, and that we're so closely connected to Israel.
Now, normally we would have gone over to and listened to Exploring Israel with Effie. I'm going to play that at the end of the segment. Describe the Holy Land, Israel, in one word, if you can. Is it possible?
I actually really struggle with this. I don't actually think you can. I tried to come up with words like breathtaking and amazing, and they just, I don't think they fully give it justice, to be honest.
Inadequate.
Yeah, totally inadequate. But I did actually finally think of something, and I thought of eternal.
Oh, very good.
Amen
bit
to
deep.
that.
Very good.
Very deep. My word was nowhere near as deep as what Jack said. I think she just owned everybody on that. I was really just going with inspiring.
Very good.
Girls, was there a particular place or event that really connected and brought you into your faith in Israel, that sort of where you felt that, yes, of course, this is so real?
For me, again, it's really hard to kind of pinpoint, but just being in Jerusalem, I think, for me, is a really key aspect of just kind of being like, this is where we're going to be. So that really established my faith for me, and just reliving everything that I have been brought up to believe in, and just being there, I suppose, and just appreciating and knowing that this is everything right here in Jerusalem.
Well, I'm stealing your word, eternal. I think that's perfect.
For me, it was a moment up north in Galilee. We went to Mount Precipice for a sunset, and that was incredible, just to take time and just to think. And you look over the valley, and there's Mount Tabor and there's all these other areas around it with so many Old Testament stories happened. But just sitting in that moment, and for us, for our faith, thinking about Jesus as a man.
Mount Precipice is right near Nazareth.
Right near Nazareth.
Yeah.
So thinking about him more as a man rather than a future view, just thinking about him as a human, and that was just a really moving moment to think, he grew up here, he looked at these places, he remembered these Old Testament stories, and that was incredibly a moving moment.
Spectacular views.
Oh, amazing.
Steve, did you were there Bible stories told often during the trip when you were at those places?
Absolutely. We tried to do that at every place and try and connect everywhere we went. Not everywhere you go is connected, of course. But most of them are stories with the life of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the kings of Israel. You go to Mount Gilboa, the story of Saul and Jonathan. These stories come alive when you go to these places. Amazing.
Now, I'm sure you did, but did you go to Yad Vashem on this trip?
We did. I've been there, I think, about 4 times, and
it's never easy.
I think it gets harder.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I don't know if that makes sense.
With you.
I think it gets harder, and we very deliberately put Yad Vashem at the end of a day. In fact, we put it after lunch, and then we give the kids the rest of the afternoon off. It's a bit of free time. You can't go to Yad Vashem and then dive into something else. And I think everyone...
Nice, that's good structuring,
yeah. Everyone, it really moved everyone, of course. And it really does make just what's there in Israel today real, because you see what it could have been and where it was heading, and then you sort of come out of there and see what the nation have done subsequent to that, and it's a miracle. There's no other word for it.
I might just slip my little experience in. I was there in Israel October, November, most recently, for a simcha in my family, and went to Jerusalem in November. And very fortunate, my cousins and I, we went to Yad Vashem again, and it's always difficult, but didn't have a break. What was amazing, this coincided with the day, and there was a special reason for being there on this particular day. It coincided with the day where the Ethiopians have their holiest day, and they have an event called the Zig, and they gather in the main park in Yerushalayim. I can't remember, the name escapes me at the moment, but my cousin goes there regularly because he was the lead pilot for Operation Solomon, which was the last major airlift of Ethiopians 27 years ago. And walking down, there are thousands of Ethiopians there, and there were so many that actually came up to my cousin and embraced him, and he has a close connection with them. But to see the Ethiopians gathering on their special day, ended up in prayer. Amazing how the way they pray there. The women are really probably more immersed into prayer than the men. And you also see the Ethiopians have a special way of dancing, of moving their upper body, their shoulders. If you go onto YouTube and see it, but that was the special day. At least I went and experienced all this pain. I'm very connected to the Holocaust myself. But then going over to another part of Jerusalem and experiencing this celebration, the gathering is still happening. There's still a few Ethiopians left in Israel. But you're listening to Shabbat Shalom with Steiner and Klein, and 3 members of the Christadelphians, Stephen, Sarah and Jacquie. Guys, you had the opportunity to spend a couple of hours with Yuval Rotem, the Israeli Foreign Minister Director General. What was that all about?
Well, Yuval used to be the ambassador to Australia.
Correct.
And he was here for 6 years, lived in Canberra, and got to know the Christadelphians during that period of time.
Oh, wow.
We made a connection there. And so when we were there, fortunately he was in Jerusalem and we were in Jerusalem.
Good timing.
Yeah, it was. And he invited us over to the ministry offices right next to the Knesset, which was really exciting to go in. It took us about an hour to get in through all the security and so on, with passports and everything. So they were very security conscious, which is understandable. And we spent about 2 hours with Yuval, and he, I suppose, spent a lot of time talking about some of the challenges the nation has on the global stage, and answered some very interesting and challenging questions from a group of Australian young people. So it was a real opportunity and enjoyed by all.
It sounds like he would have enjoyed it as well.
I think he probably did. He seemed to be enjoying it, but we were very thankful for it. It really was a great privilege.
And my favourite topic, what were some of the foods that you enjoyed?
Can't leave that out.
That's what I thought.
What is Israel without its food? For me, just there's so many things.
It's a great comment, Sarah.
Shawarma, the falafels, the halva, the juices. Australia just doesn't know what it's doing with food. But it was just incredible. I mean, I think part of the cultural experience of Israel is indulging in the food, and you learn so much about the culture just from the flavours.
I've never eaten so well. I definitely came back.
So did you all come back a few kilos
slightly heavier? Yes.
Well, yeah. So glad they fed you. I would have been embarrassed.
It was one of the better highlights, I reckon, of the trip as well, which was just being surrounded by the culture, I suppose, and really immersing in the food that they have, and I don't know, appreciating it. You have falafel over here and you just don't appreciate it because it's just a food, but over there it's just absolutely amazing.
Now, did you experience the Israeli breakfasts? Because they really are something.
They were quite unique. Probably wasn't my favourite meal, but I do remember the first morning coming down and thinking, wow, there's olives for breakfast.
Salads.
Yeah, and salads and all sorts of things. But it was quite a cultural experience.
The dairy foods taste different to Australia because the cows are different. So and breakfast is usually this huge buffet of every type of dairy food and every type of fish and every type of salad, and that's how you start the day, with this enormous breakfast. Jacquie, did you?
I remember when I first went over 5 years ago, and just coming down and seeing a different side of what breakfast looks like, and I suppose anywhere you travel it's going to be like that, and that is an amazing experience that you get. It's just looking at what people eat in different countries.
Now, knowing Effie the way I do, must have been some funny experiences on the trip as well.
He's a very funny man.
He is.
Look, off the top of my head, I don't know if you've got any, Sarah, but look, I would just
too many to remember.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, probably. Just like the bus trips, I don't know, like, you kind of associate bus trips like long, boring. You kind of having
row your boat,
small talk with the person next to you, that kind of thing. But Effie, I don't know, he's just such a knowledgeable man, and whenever he spoke, it was just full of wisdom. It was full of knowledge and hilarious at the same time. And he was always joking. He was always getting to know everyone. And I suppose, look, I couldn't pinpoint a moment, but the experience with him was fantastic.
We should tell the listeners that there were 58 Christadelphians on the tour. Israel has 2 buses. Only 2 buses that can cater for 60 people, which to me is a lot anyway. So you're all on this one, obviously a double-decker bus. Was it double-decker? No? Single.
All the luggage was under. Yeah.
Okay. Haven't been on a bus tour for a long time. School buses, the old days. All right, look, we're getting close to running out of time. It has been an absolute delight having Sarah, Jacquie and Stephen Dotson from the Christadelphians, telling us, enlightening us about their most recent tour to Israel. How long was it, all in all?
We were 2 weeks in Israel, and we spent a couple of days in Jordan and then a couple of days in Egypt, 3 weeks in all.
And what was Egypt like, very quickly?
Very different. Egypt was great. I mean, the antiquities and everything there are exciting, but it doesn't compare to Israel. I mean, is the work that Israel has done in the tourism space, even in the 4 years between our two trips, is just extraordinary. You feel so comfortable and everything's so easy there. Egypt's a bit of an effort, but we had a good time in Egypt nonetheless. I mean, I don't know what you thought, Sarah, but
Egypt was definitely quite different.
Still an experience.
My main complaint was there was no hummus in Egypt, and after coming from
what did you have to eat there very quickly?
We had to adjust, but it was sad. After having hummus every meal in Israel and coming to Egypt, it's like there's no hummus.
Stephen, will you be taking another group this year?
Not this year.
Or
We're
sort of biannually?
toying around the idea of doing something the following year in 2019, but we'll see, God willing.
Lily, any last questions?
Well, we've covered food now, and I've just been really excited to share your experiences with Israel because it just means so much to us. And it's a really special place, and we didn't once talk about politics or any of the neighbours or anything, which was delightful because we could keep it all positive and really good. So just in the context of the Bible and the stories and the history and everything, it is, as you said, eternal.
Right, you've been listening to Shabbat Shalom with Steiner and Klein and Christadelphians. Just an absolute delight, and makes me want to hurry up and go back. I'll be going back again shortly next year. Lily, what a wonderful program we've just had. I'm just totally moved.
It certainly was. I can't believe it's
First of all, we've met three lovely people, and we'll have the Christadelphians back again sometime later in the year. You've been listening to Shabbat Shalom, and I'd like to say Shabbat Shalom.
And I'd like to say Shabbat Shalom.
I'm Yisrael Chai, and peace.